You were told to put your money in a savings account. You were told compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. You were told that cutting expenses and living below your means is how you build wealth. Every personal finance book, every advisor, every respected voice repeats the same formula. Save 10%, avoid debt, buy index funds, wait 40 years. What nobody mentions is that this advice keeps you poor by design. It locks your capital in systems that benefit banks and governments while eroding your purchasing power through mechanisms you're never taught to recognize. There's an entirely different framework for thinking about money that has nothing to do with saving and everything to do with velocity. And the people who understand this have been building multi-generational wealth while everyone else celebrates hitting 100,000 in their retirement account at age 50. The concept of saving money as a virtue is a modern invention that serves institutions, not individuals. When you put money in a savings account, you're not preserving wealth. You're lending capital to a bank at rates that guarantee you lose purchasing power while they profit from the spread. The bank pays you 0.5% and lends your money out at 7%. You're the raw material in their profit machine, and the entire cultural narrative around saving exists to keep that machine running. This isn't conspiracy. It's basic business model analysis. Banks need deposits to function. Convincing you that parking money with them is responsible behavior is marketing genius that became conventional wisdom. Now look at how Jewish communities approached this same question historically. They didn't save money. They deployed it. The goal was never to accumulate cash in a vault. It was to keep capital moving through networks that generated returns, built relationships, and created options. A merchant didn't save profits from a successful trade. He immediately invested in the next shipment, extended credit to a reliable partner, or sent capital to a relative in another city who had a better opportunity. The money never stopped moving because idle money is dead money. It earns nothing, it builds nothing, and in times of inflation or currency debasement, it evaporates. Think about the mechanics of this for a minute. In medieval trade networks, a merchant might receive payment for goods sold in Venice. Instead of holding those ducats, he would immediately convert them into a letter of credit payable to his cousin in Amsterdam, who would use that capital to purchase textiles that another family member would sell in Cairo, generating profit that funded the next transaction in the chain. The same capital cycled through 3 transactions in the time it would take someone else to safely store their coins. Each movement generated returns. Each transaction built trust and relationships. The velocity of money created compounding that savings never could. This contradicts everything you've been taught because the modern financial system needs your money to sit still. Mutual funds need stable capital to manage. Banks need deposits that don't flee at the first sign of trouble. Government bonds need buyers who will hold for 30 years. The entire infrastructure of modern finance is built on the assumption that you will be a passive holder of capital rather than an active deployer of it. Saving serves that system. Deployment threatens it. The families who built lasting wealth understood something else that directly opposes conventional advice. Debt used correctly is not the enemy. It's a tool for acceleration. While everyone tells you to avoid debt at all costs, they're using debt to build empires. Real estate investors using leverage to control 10 properties instead of owning 1 free and clear. Business owners using credit lines to scale operations faster than profits alone would allow. Traders using margin to amplify returns in markets they understand. The wealthy use other people's money to increase velocity while you're told to fear it. Jewish merchants were among the most sophisticated users of credit in history, not because they were reckless, but because they understood the mathematics of leverage. If you can borrow at 5% and deploy that capital in trade that returns 15%, the debt isn't a burden. It's a tool that amplifies your returns. The risk comes from borrowing for consumption or borrowing without a clear deployment plan. But borrowing to increase the velocity and scale of productive capital is how fortunes get built while savers are still calculating their compound interest over decades. Here's what breaks the entire saving paradigm. Inflation is not some abstract economic force. It's a deliberate policy tool that governments use to manage debt and stimulate spending. When you save cash, you're betting that the purchasing power will be there when you need it. But central banks explicitly target 2% inflation. which means they're announcing their intention to devalue your savings by half every 35 years. That's not a bug in the system. That's the system working as designed. Your savings are the sacrifice that makes the economic model function. Contrast this with assets that move with or ahead of inflation. Real estate that generates rental income. Businesses that can raise prices. Commodities that maintain value in real terms. Relationships and skills that command higher fees as currency devalues. These aren't savings. They're deployments of capital into forms that adapt to monetary reality rather than hoping it stays stable. The family that puts $100,000 into income-producing assets protects purchasing power in a way that no savings account can match, and they generate cash flow on top of that protection. The Talmud has a concept that directly addresses this. Money is compared to water. If you dam it up, it stagnates and becomes worthless. If you let it flow through channels that irrigate fields, it creates abundance that multiplies. The metaphor wasn't poetic, it was instructional. Capital must circulate to be productive. Holding it immobile is a misunderstanding of what money actually is. It's not wealth itself. It's a claim on future productivity, and claims depreciate while productive assets appreciate. This is why the wealthy don't have large savings accounts. They have credit lines. They maintain liquidity through access to capital, not through hoarding cash. When an opportunity appears, they don't withdraw savings. They deploy credit, capture the opportunity, and pay back the loan from the returns. The velocity this creates means they're constantly in motion while savers are stuck waiting for enough accumulation to make a move. By the time the saver has enough saved, the opportunity is gone and prices have risen. The credit user acts immediately and profits from timing. There's a psychological component to this that matters. Saving creates a scarcity mindset. You're always protecting what you have, afraid to risk it, watching it slowly grow while opportunities pass by. Deployment creates an abundance mindset. You're looking for places to put capital to work, evaluating opportunities, building skills in analysis and negotiation. The saver becomes defensive and risk-averse. The deployer becomes offensive and calculated in risk-taking. Over time, these mindsets create completely different life trajectories, even if both people started with the same amount of money. Look at how this played out historically in Jewish communities facing persecution. When expulsion came, the family with savings buried gold or tried to carry physical wealth. The family with deployed capital had outstanding loans, business partnerships, and trade relationships in other cities. Their wealth wasn't in their possession, it was in the network. When they arrived in a new city, they called in debts, activated partnerships, and rebuilt quickly using capital that was already distributed. The saver had whatever they could physically carry. The deployer had an entire commercial network that reconstituted their wealth faster than authorities could track it. This has direct application to modern wealth protection. If all your wealth is in accounts that can be frozen, property that can be seized, or cash that can be inflated away, you're in the same position as the medieval family with buried gold, vulnerable and immobile. But if your wealth is in relationships that owe you favors, skills that generate income anywhere, partnerships that operate across jurisdictions, and assets that can be quickly liquidated and moved, you have options. The structure of deployment creates resilience that saving never can. The education system teaches saving because it creates compliant workers. If you're afraid to lose your savings, you can't afford to take risks. You stay in the job you hate because you need the steady paycheck. You don't start the business because you might lose your nest egg. You don't move to where opportunities are better because you've built your life around protecting what you have. Saving keeps you trapped. Deployment creates freedom. Consider the opportunity cost of saving. If you save $5,000 a year for 30 years at 5% return, you'll have about $350,000. Impressive until you compare it to someone who took that same $5,000 each year and deployed it into learning a high-income skill, building a small business, or investing in assets that appreciated faster than market averages. The deployed capital doesn't just grow. It changes the person's ability to generate more capital. A skill learned with $5,000 might earn an extra $50,000 per year for the rest of your career. The return on deployment compounds in ways that compound interest never captures. Jewish tradition emphasized this through the concept of Torah study combined with trade. You didn't just save money. You invested time in learning that made you more valuable. You invested in relationships that created business opportunities. You invested in your children's education so they could operate at higher levels than you. The capital wasn't just financial. It was human, social, and intellectual. All of it deployed. None of it sitting idle, waiting to grow through passive accumulation. There's a reason financial advisors push the save and invest model. They earn fees on assets under management. The more you save with them, the more they profit. Their incentive is to have you accumulate as much as possible in accounts they control. Active deployment of capital into opportunities outside their system doesn't generate fees for them, so they frame it as risky and irresponsible while they use sophisticated leverage and deployment strategies for their own wealth. The advice they give you is not the strategy they use themselves. When you understand this gap, everything changes. The conventional wisdom isn't wisdom. It's a strategy designed to benefit the system, not you. Real wealth building looks completely different. It's aggressive deployment into assets that generate returns. It's using leverage to scale faster than savings allow. It's building networks and skills that create opportunities. It's moving capital quickly to where returns are highest, rather than letting it accumulate slowly in low-yield accounts. This isn't reckless gambling. It's calculated use of capital principles that have built every significant fortune in history. Here's the adjusted version. Those who mastered this passed down a completely different relationship with money. They taught children that money is a tool, not a goal, that the purpose of capital is to create more capital through intelligent deployment, not to sit and be admired. That opportunities come to those who are ready to move quickly, and savings accounts are the opposite of ready. They're locked, slow, and designed for people who aren't looking for opportunities. The mindset shift alone is worth more than any compound interest calculation. This is why conventional saving advice keeps most people middle class at best, while a small group builds generational wealth. Not theory invented in a classroom. Principles extracted from communities that survived economic collapse, political persecution, and systematic wealth confiscation by understanding what money actually is and how it actually works. Drop in the comments. Velocity over storage. That phrase captures the core principle that changes everything once you internalize it.